Welcome to Roadmap to the Federal Budget from the National Association of County and City Health Officials. Local health departments like yours are funded annually through state and federal dollars. For those that aren't quite sure how those federal dollars trickle down to your local health department, we are hoping to provide a little insight into the sometimes overly complicated process. So first things first, what is the federal budget? The federal budget is the amount of money the federal government will spend each year. The budget includes items such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense, and agriculture. So what is the process of the federal budget? The federal budget is first created and proposed by the President with his team of policy experts in the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB. The federal budget as proposed by the President in FY 2017 is around $4.1 trillion. With the exception of a new administration, the President then sends their budget requests to Congress each February for the coming fiscal year, which begins in October. So in February 2016, President Obama submitted his budget requests for FY 2017. So step one, where do the requests in the budget come from? The President and Cabinet members decide policy priorities for each federal agency. Those priorities are given to the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, which then give instructions to each federal agency on how to construct their budget. So, for example, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, submits its own budget request to OMB and defends the request with data or documents supporting this request. The OMB then uses these documents to prepare the President's budget request. In step two, after the President's budget request has been released to the public, it's Congress's turn to pass their own budget resolutions. The Congress can entirely ignore the President's budget or write their own. They set their own spending, taxation, and policy priorities called a budget resolution in the House Committee on the Budget and the Senate Committee on the Budget. The budget resolution is not a legally binding resolution, but is more like a blueprint for overall spending by the federal government. The House writes theirs first, followed by the Senate. The two each pass their resolutions and then come together in a joint conference to iron out the differences. A reconciled version is then voted on in both chambers. However, Congress doesn't require a budget resolution to fund the federal government. Step 3, once Congress has voted on their budget for the year, the Appropriations Committee in the House and Senate then set the level of budget authority for all discretionary spending programs. Budget authority refers to the legal power of a federal agency to spend money by entering into obligations. The Appropriations Committee's top-line spending level is then broken down into the 12 Appropriation Subcommittees. The 12 subcommittees are Agriculture, Rural Development, and the Food and Drug Administration, Commerce, Justice and Science, Defense, Energy and Water, Financial Services and General Government, Homeland Security, Interior and Environment, Labor, Health and Human Services and Education, the Legislative Branch, Military Construction and Veterans Affairs, State and Foreign Operations, and Transportation and Housing and Urban Development. Most public health programs are funded through the Department of Health and Human Services. Information is gathered and hearings are conducted by each subcommittee in examining each agency's proposed budget. Each member of Congress can write a letter outlining their spending priorities for each of the bills. Once the priorities of members are known, the subcommittee chair then writes the first draft of the subcommittee's appropriations bill. The first draft is called the chair's mark and fits into the constraints of the House and Senate budget resolution. Once it has passed subcommittee, it goes to full committee where it is reviewed and submitted to the full House or Senate for consideration. The fourth step in the budget process is the vote on appropriations bills and reconciling the differences between the two in the House and Senate. The House and Senate subcommittees each have their own bills, their own justifications for spending levels of different agencies and programs. The House and Senate pass their own versions, and then conference committees resolve the differences between the two. Once the reconciled version is produced, it is voted on by both chambers. Once a conferenced appropriations bill is passed in both chambers, it moves on to the President for signature. In step 5, the President signs each appropriations bill and it becomes law. When the President has signed all 12 appropriations bills, the budget process is complete for the fiscal year. However, this rarely happens by October 1st, the start of the new fiscal year. When the budget process is not complete by October 1st, the Congress must pass a continuing resolution to keep agencies funded for a set period of time. These levels are based off the previous year's budget. The Congress and the President do not always agree on the appropriations bills, and the President has the power to veto any bill, which then goes back to the Congress. The federal agencies are funded by the continuing resolution until a bill becomes law. Sounds easy, right? Well, in the current political climate, it can get messy when lawmakers decide or divert their budget priorities for political gain. Political ideology can play a key role in the budget process. We hope this Budget 101 training has been helpful in your understanding of the budget process. To learn more about NACCHO's annual funding priorities, go to naccho.org and click on Policy and Advocacy followed by Funding Priorities.